Back to 11.5. This is going to be day 2, and we're going to continue talking about domain and range given a graph with a couple new things added. Okay, so I'm going to throw up a couple review problems from yesterday. Domain and range. Now again, remember domain is all the x values, which is from left to right, and the range is all the y values, and that's up and down. So for domain, we look at the farthest left it goes, and that's at -1. So that's the furthest left it goes. Now the furthest right it goes is 4. So we go up to 4. Now remember, we're in interval notation, so we need to write either our curved or our square brackets. Now remember, curved is when it does not equal. Now if you recall, throughout this year we've had a couple of times where we have values that does not equal a certain value on a graph or line graph with inequalities, and that we usually represent with an open dot, right? So it can go up to 4, but it can't equal 4. So we have a curved parenthesis around that because it can't equal 4. So this says it can't equal 4, but it goes up to 4. And over here, it's a closed dot at -1. So it can equal -1. So that's where we throw in our square bracket. So this is just notation to write the domain. So people who read this will see, well, it can equal -1 and it'll go up to 4, but it can't equal 4. Okay? And that's the domain because it can equal -1 and it can go up to 4, but it doesn't equal 4. Now range is how high and low it goes. Well, the lowest it goes is 1. The highest it goes is 6. Okay? Now same thing again. It can equal this point at the y value of 1, so we can have a square bracket here. It can be at 1, but it can't be at 6 because we have an open dot at the y value 6. So it can't equal that, so we need a curved parenthesis. And that would be the domain and range for that function. Let's do another one. Okay, domain again is your x values. The smallest it gets is -2. The largest x goes, because x is from left to right, is 2. So it goes from -2 to +2. And now we need parentheses or square brackets. Well, if you look, they can't equal -2 or 2 for x because it's an open dot. So they're both going to be parentheses. Range. Well, the lowest y can go, that's the height, is -3. So that's the lowest it goes. The highest it goes, well, is up here, and that would be at the y value of 0, right? This would be 0. So it goes from -3 to 0. Now we got to think, can it equal -3? Well, there's not an open dot here, so yes it can. So we're going to signify that with a square bracket. But then the highest it goes is -2. Or sorry, 0. But can it be at 0? No, because there are open dots on that line at 0. So we have to have a curved parenthesis there. Okay, and that would be the domain and range for that graph. Now, I want to look at this. We're not going to do a whole lot with these, just because they are, I don't know, this all the same for linear functions. If you have these arrows, this shows that they go on and on and on. And as you can imagine, this would keep going up and up and up and down and down and down. Okay, so let's think about the domain. Domain is all the x values. The further you go down, the more to the left and right you go. And this arrow just says that it goes on and on and on forever and ever and ever. So it'll actually never end. And so the furthest left it can go, we're going to say, is -infinity. We're going infinite out. Now the same thing over here, if you're going positive direction, we don't have a negative value, we have a positive infinity. So the smallest the x value can be is -infinity, and the largest it keeps going out and out and out to positive infinity. Now here's the thing though, is that you can't equal negative infinity. There is not a number that's infinity. Infinity is just an idea that numbers go on forever and ever and ever. So because you can't reach negative infinity, if you have a negative infinity or positive infinity, right next to it, it has to have a curved parenthesis, okay? Because you can't equal infinity. There is not a number. Now the range is the same, okay? Because as you can imagine, this line's going to keep going down and down and down, while the lowest it goes would be negative infinity, but you can't equal negative infinity, so we have a curved parenthesis, and then we keep going up and up and up. It's going to go up infinitely, so we're going to say it's positive infinity. But again, you can't equal infinity. There's no number infinity, so we have curved parenthesis. So a lot of what we talked about, at least for our lines, the domain was negative infinity to positive infinity, and the range was negative infinity to positive infinity. Now, our quadratics and our exponentials are a little different, but we're not really going to get into those too much. So we're going to use this idea of negative infinity and positive infinity. So this looks very similar. This is to yesterday's stuff. This is going to be what your homework is going to look like today. Now we have a graph, and arrows show us that they're going that direction forever and ever and ever, okay? Right here, we don't have an arrow, so this graph doesn't keep going down and down and down. It looks like it starts here, but it's going to keep going on and on and on in that direction forever and ever and ever. So we have to use that to find our domain and range. Now remember, domain is left to right. So I'm going to look at my leftmost point, which is negative 1. Okay? Negative 1 is the smallest x can go. And it can equal negative 1 because it's a solid dot. So I'm going to throw a square bracket because it can equal negative 1. Now, as you can see, it goes on and on and on. As you can imagine, 4, 5, this will keep going on and on and on. So the largest x can be, this is going in the positive direction, would be positive infinity. Now again, using what we learned in the last slide, you can't equal positive infinity. So you're going to throw a curved parenthesis there. So that would be the domain. It's from negative 1 to positive infinity. So it's going to go from negative 1 and it's going to keep going and going and going. Let's talk about the range now. So remember, range is y values are up and down. So I'm going to start with the smallest it can get, which is at this line, which is at 0. So the smallest it can be is 0. Now it can equal 0 because there's this filled in dot there. So again, we're going to have that square parenthesis. And as you can imagine, if this is generally going up, and it's going to go on and on forever and ever and ever, so it's going to keep going up and it's never going to stop. So again, the highest it'll reach is positive infinity. But you can't equal infinity, so you have to throw a curved parenthesis there. So this would be the domain and range of this graph in interval notation. Okay, let's look at this guy. So we have two arrows, and again they show that they keep going in the same direction. So as you can see, this one's going left and down, so it's going to keep going left, 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 down, 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 and this one's going right and up. So we have to think about domain and range. Now this is very similar to our line. They're both going on and on forever and ever and ever. So the domain, as you can imagine, the further down, down, down we go, the further left we go, and that'll never stop. So the domain will be negative infinity, and same with over here, this is going up and up and up and right and right and right. So it'll never stop. So it'll go to positive infinity. And actually same with the range. As you imagine, this will keep going down, down, down forever. So the lowest it can be is negative infinity. The highest it can be is positive infinity. Okay. Let's do another one. Now we're going to assume that when it shows an arrow, it's going to keep going in that direction. So we're just going to assume that it's going off like this. Okay. Now, domain we have, well, sorry, it's from left to right. So let's start at our leftmost point, which would be -4. And it can equal -4 because it's a closed dot. Well, if you can imagine this graph's going on and on and on and on and on, well, then we're going to go to positive infinity. And we can't equal infinity, so we're going to have a curved parenthesis. That would be the domain. Let's think about the range. Well, the smallest this graph gets is at -2. Okay? So at -2, and it can't equal it because there's not a closed dot. So the smallest it gets is -2. And if this goes on and on and on and on, well, if this keeps going like this, then the highest it'll get would be positive infinity. Okay? Now one other thing, is there an eraser with this? No. Make sure you have this written down. One other thing, I won't throw one of these on your homework, but sometimes it's not very clear. Maybe that means they're going to continue to pattern, maybe not. So I wouldn't throw one of these up there on for you on your homework. But what could also be the case is it's repeating itself, which would change the range. And I wouldn't penalize you if you read that differently, okay? So with that, hopefully this is okay. We're going to have a Zoom session over this, so you could bring yesterday's and today's questions to Zoom session. And then you'll still have plenty of time to turn it in. So with that, I will see you guys tomorrow.